We all have to start somewhere. So if you are a new or newish screenwriter, then welcome to the club, welcome to the community. I do these videos because I want to make things easier for those who are coming after me. I want you to have an easier time than I did. I want you to find joy and success faster than I have. So I thought, why not just do a little video about 4 things I wish I had known before I started. So that's what we're going to do today. 4 things I wish I'd known. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for liking. If you find value, please be sure to hit that button. Subscribe if you haven't done that. I really do appreciate it. Let's jump in. I stumbled into screenwriting. I'd always loved to write, and I tried writing a lot of different things. I even remember dictating a story to my wife. I was working on a novel at the time, just dictating it to my wife while I was driving a car when we were newly married. I mean, I totally married up because she was willing to do that. But I've always loved writing, and there used to be this thing, some of you may not even know this was a thing, but you would get these little mailers, things in the mail, and be like, hey, for 19 cents you can get 6 books, and then you just got to buy 3 books at some point over the next 2 years or whatever. So I would occasionally do those if I found enough books that I liked. And there was one time where I got the mailer and there were several books in there that I was like, oh, I want to get that and that and that, and I was really into it. But I had like one other free book and I couldn't figure out what to do, and I ended up getting this book, The Complete Guide to Screenwriting by J. Michael Straczynski. Now, it's a massive, thick book, and it's kind of outdated. There's a lot of things in there that don't really pertain anymore. But it was my first screenwriting book, and my journey began. So let me share with you some 4 things that I've learned on my journey that I wish I knew then. Lesson number 1, if your story isn't pitchable, it's not worth taking the time to write it. Don't get in the habit of writing things that you're not going to be able to sell. Yes, I know you're new. Yes, I know you're starting out. Yes, I realize you probably are not going to be able to sell the very first or 3rd or 5th thing that you write. It takes most people between 10 and 20 scripts to kind of get their writing up to where they need it to be. So don't be discouraged, but don't get in the habit of just writing that story about the single mom struggling trying to raise her kid. Like, that story's been told 9 million times, unless that mom is a spy and she's attending a PTA meeting and learns that one of the other PTA members is a sleeper agent for another country. Okay, now that's different, right? That's a pitchable, that's something pitchable. There's something else there. But if it's just the basic story, you know, single mom trying to raise her kid, and it's really hard. Okay, we've seen that story. And as far as a story goes, it's not going to stand out. And when you're starting out, you want to write a story that helps you stand out. And you need a pitchable story. You need something that someone can read and then quickly go down the hall and say like, hey, I've got this story about this mom. You just think she's normal, but she's really a spy, and she discovers that there's a sleeper agent on the PTA. Okay, that's a pitchable thing. So if it's not pitchable, don't waste your time writing it. Get in the habit of writing things that you could potentially sell. It needs to be pitchable. It needs to have a good hook. Lesson number 2, crafting a story and telling that story are 2 very different things. Screenwriting involves both, though. You've got to have a good story and you got to tell a good story. You've got to do both things effectively. The problem is, starting out, you hear a lot of advice of people like, just write, just write, just write, just write. And so you start trying to write. But what you're doing is you're trying to figure out the story and you're trying to tell it at the same time. And that's where the problems occur, because now the line starts to get blurred between what is story and what is storytelling. There is a very clear difference between story and storytelling, and you need to understand story, and you need to understand how to craft a story, and then there's the whole telling of it. And you can tell a story in a whole lot of ways. I mean, you and I could sit down and we could outline and figure out a story, just figure out the whole thing and have a completed story. Here it is. But then you sit down to write it, I sit down to write it. It would be 2 very different stories, even though the story is the same. The telling of it alters the story. It makes it more of an experience. And those 2 things are not the same. So I wish I would have learned that sooner on, so that I could have focused on what is story. Let me learn the story. Let me learn the basics of story. And then once I know that, now I can tell a story in any medium I want. Now I can tell it in any way I want. Now I can do all kinds of things. I know when to use this tool and that one and this one, and I know that the notes I'm getting, hey, that's a note about story, or hey, that's a note about storytelling, and it helps me know how to address them. So probably a really good cognitive thing to just kind of shift in your head is to understand that there is a major difference between story and storytelling. They are not the same, and if people are telling you they're the same thing, they're not. The problem is, it's just in screenwriting, you have to do both. You've got to craft a story, and then you've got to tell it well. If you want more information on story structure, there is a link below for a free guide, 100% free guide to story structure. It's very robust, complete guide to story structure. Read it, learn it. It will help in save you all kinds of trouble. So be sure to do that if that's of interest to you. Lesson number 3 is you have to demonstrate you can play the game. You will hear a lot of people say, and sometimes I will even say this, there are no rules in screenwriting. Okay, there's no rules. And yet there's kind of some rules. There's some things that you kind of have to follow. There's some boundaries to play within. You can give me something and I could look at it and tell you this is a screenplay, this is not a screenplay. I mean, it's got to look a certain way. It's got to do certain things. You're only dealing with audio and visual things. If you're writing smells and stuff like that in your screenplay, probably not a good strategy. How this fabric is really soft. Okay, the audience can't reach through the screen and feel that. Like, you can do that in a novel, but not in a film. There's things that the medium says, okay, you kind of have to play within these rules. It's sort of like if you want to try out for a baseball team, but you show up with a soccer ball. They're going to be like, what are you doing? Like, where's your glove? Do you have a bat? Or you want to borrow somebody's bat or anything? Like, you can't do it. You got to show you can play the game. You got to show you can play within the rules, or maybe a better way to say it, within the field. I got to show that I can participate. Once I can show I can participate, now I also want to show that I'm different, that I'm unique, that I'm a star, that I'm really good at this, or I'm really good at this, or here's my really strong voice here, or this really strong element here. Now you can kind of start to break the rules in a sense. And you will hear people say, don't follow the rules, don't follow the rules, don't follow the rules. The problem is you're not going to be able to get past any initial gatekeeper in Hollywood, or really any film industry, even if you're somewhere else around the world. You're not going to be able to break in unless you can show you can kind of play within the rules. And when I started out, I just started thinking like, oh, I can just write whatever I want. I can do it however I want. I don't really have to follow rules. I can just format it how I want. And it's like, no. It actually set me back a bit. So please learn to play within the field. You got to show you have a right to be able to be on the field. So with that, let me mention a couple of specific things. Software. Get some. Okay, there's free options out there. Get some software. Stop trying to play at it. If you're going to want to do it, then at least get some free software. Okay? At least some free. There's some paid software. Just you want some software. Okay? So do that. Learn how to format. Learn how to properly format. Formatting is a storytelling tool. Remember I was saying there's story and there's storytelling. How you format something helps you tell the story. So learn the format, learn what's expected, and learn where you can kind of deviate from the expectation to tell the story in the way that you're wanting to tell it. Learn what some of the books are. Okay, there's books out there that people in Hollywood, they expect you to know or at least be familiar with. So read those books, study the films, the great ones, okay? The ones that everybody is like, hey, you should have watched this, you should have watched this, you should have watched this, you should be familiar about that. Like, at least do that. Stay up on information that's going on in the industry. Like, all of that stuff shows and helps demonstrate that you can play on the field, that you have a right to be there because you know what's what. You know what's going on. You know how to do things. You know how to navigate, at least in a beginner type level. You can navigate what's going on, and that helps show and demonstrate that you can be on the field. All right, the last lesson, number 4. If this video is helpful to you at all in any way, please be sure to like, subscribe, bell, all that stuff, comment, share, whatever. Just interact in some way. It just helps other people find this channel. I really appreciate it. Lesson number 4, here we go. There is no wrong way to get better at screenwriting. There are fast ways and there are slow ways, but there are no wrong ways. So don't be discouraged, and don't let anyone discourage you if they start telling you, hey, you should be doing this instead of that. you should do this and you should try that. You should do this other thing. Now, maybe what they're saying is, hey, this one's a little faster, this one's a little slower, but that doesn't make it wrong. There are things that you need to know, and everybody comes to screenwriting with different life experience, different world experience, different writing ability, different writing talent, and there might be some things that you need to learn that somebody else is like, I didn't need to learn that. Why are you doing that? Just do this other thing. But they're not realizing that that's something that you need to learn that they didn't have to. Similarly, there might be something that you already know how to do, and they're like, wait, how did you do that thing? You're like, well, I just kind of did it, because they don't know how to do it. So there's no right or wrong way. But there's definitely faster and slower ways. Okay, the slow way is something like you read a book, you read another book, you read some screenplays, you start trying to write, it doesn't work, you try to write again, doesn't work, read another book. Like, that's the slow way, okay? And can you learn to be a screenwriter doing it the slow way? Yes, you can. Absolutely, 100%. And maybe you're at a life stage where you're like, you know what, I don't need to be in a hurry. And even if I sell something, I'm not necessarily, I mean, that'd be great if I sold something, but I'm just doing it because I like it. I do it because I love it. And that's awesome. Just keep plugging away, keep doing your thing. Just know that, hey, you're just making slow progress, and you may be perfectly fine with that. Totally cool. If you're wanting to like jump in, right? Like I'm going for it. Okay, now you probably want to find some faster ways to do that. And there are some faster tracks. One of them might be to go to a university and get a degree, either a bachelor's degree or an advanced graduate degree in screenwriting or filmmaking or something like that that you are interested in pursuing. Now, I realize not everybody can do that. I realize sometimes it's cost prohibitive, not a problem, but the benefit of an advanced degree is not just what you learn, but the people you are around. My guess is if you are anything like me, I wasn't really around many other creative people. And so it was hard for me in some ways to stay motivated. It was hard for me to be challenged because people didn't really think like I thought, didn't really see the world like I see the world. But when I went to graduate school, the friendships I made there, the people I interacted with, man, they helped me and benefited me more than, in some ways, more than the actual classes, because we were challenging each other and challenging each other's writing and what was going on and stories, and then just living life and understanding different perspectives and seeing how other creatives work was just so great. And that helped jump me ahead from where I was. So for me, it was very beneficial. So it might be something that you might want to consider. But again, that may be cost prohibitive or just location prohibitive for you. So there's things like online communities, like watching YouTube videos, following channels, getting in groups on social media where people talk about things, reading Reddit boards, participating in those. Like, all of those things are helpful, because the more input you can get from other people and the more feedback and more perspective you can have, the faster you're going to move along. You can also take some online classes. There's a lot of online classes out there. I have one that's listed below. It's Screenwriting Fast Track. It's really geared toward beginners. It's what are all the basics. So we talk about some of the formatting stuff. We talk about dialogue. We talk about building characters and character arcs. Lots of stuff. It's kind of like a first semester graduate level class packed in that one Screenwriting Fast Track. So if that's of interest to you, that's below. But there's lots of other classes out there. So don't just feel like, oh, I got to take mine, or he's trying to pitch mine. I mean, I would love if you took mine, but you don't have to do mine. Just if you're wanting to move faster, you're going to have to do something to move faster down the road. But there's not a wrong way, okay? There's just fast and slow. So just be aware of that. And the last thing I will say with this is don't apologize for whatever path you're on. If you are taking the slow path, then take the slow path. If you know, like, hey, I'm just going to kind of slowly work at this and I'm just going to figure it out, like, you can totally do that. And that's awesome. And I look forward to hearing about your success. If you are like, no, I really want to do this thing, okay, then get out of the slow lane, get into the fast lane and start going. That will help you. Okay, it's going to help you move further down the road. So some things to think about are interacting with other people, getting some feedback, learning all of the little basics, learning the difference between story and storytelling. Anything you can do to help you with those kind of elements is going to help move you faster down the road. Hopefully this has been helpful to you. I hope it's been encouraging to you. And if it has, please be sure, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, bell. I really appreciate it. Thank you again for watching. And when you go to tell a story that matters. See you later.